Afternoon. Let's get straight into your approach. I mean, this is undoubtedly the worst performing of the SOEs at the moment. Where do you start fixing it?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for your call and your interest. I mean, I think it is the worst performing, but it's also, I think, the state-owned entity which is closest to commercial change possibilities. If you stand back for a second and think about what the post office is today, it's probably got one of the best infrastructure footprints in the country. It's got a huge client base, a huge dollar on that client base, and its revenue mix could change quite substantially to bring it in line with other post offices around the world. So, I mean, the post office has sort of been left in a yesterday economic model, and I'm hoping that we can inspire people to embrace tomorrow economic model. And I think that's the first point. The first point of departure is to give people a reason to come back to work and work hard. And they would only do that if they can see their ambitions potentially being fulfilled in an organization which is expanding rather than contracting.
Yeah, this idea of expansion and investment rather than running for bailouts, you would have to do a lot of convincing. Yeah. I mean, we've just heard the unions say that they'll be watching you to find out what priority you give workers on their grievances. How do you plan to handle that?
Well, you know, I don't think it's about me versus the unions or management versus unions. It's about us sitting down and talking about a failing economic institution and how we together formulate plans for its survival. You know, this is an organization which, if we don't work together, won't survive this. Okay, so there's an extraordinary common cause right from the beginning. And I'm just saying that instead of making an outdated business smaller, okay, which would still be an outdated business, but even less effective with even a higher fixed cost overhead, let's talk about how together we can make it bigger, so that there's space for us to grow, there's space for us to accommodate the aspirations of growth of the workers. And I really believe that's possible. I'm not making this stuff up. If you look at the possibilities of e-commerce, if you look at financial services, if you look at all of the sort of products that can go through a post office infrastructure, the growth possibilities are endless. And if you start thinking about, for example, competing with courier companies instead of letting them take all of the business because they provide a more efficient service, why can't we do that? Why can't we have some of that economics? And then we will have enough to go around.
Well, let me pick
up. We become a competitive. Yeah,
let me just pick up from that idea there, Mark. I mean, so what sort of post office do you see in the next 5 years, if that all goes well? Presumably, as you suggested, it's not just about delivering letters. What sort of post office are we likely to see in 5 years?
Well, we'll see a post office that's engaged in e-commerce. I mean, if you start looking at what one of Amazon's challenges is that the unit cost of delivery is starting to erode their margins. So they're starting to invest in brick and mortar. Okay, well, why can't we be, in some sort of deal with e-commerce? Amazon, I just choose as an example. That's the first example. Why? We've got a banking license within the post office. Why are we not using that license to start looking at transforming the banking rules of yesteryear into a more broad-based, financial capability, instead of that going into a much higher risk area where it is today? Why don't we look at the post office as a place where you can distribute things, including things like, medicines and antiretrovirals and so on, which people have to go to enormous. The post office is around the corner. The post office is a place where you should go. It's a friendly, open place where you can go and invest money, where you can go and draw money, where you can go and do get your insurance products, whatever it is. It is probably the most pervasive branch infrastructure in South Africa, and it's got an extraordinarily low cost of capital. If you didn't know I was talking about the post office, you'd get quite excited about the possibilities, And so let's stop talking about the old post office, and let's talk about a post office 2016, for which there's ample precedent. The biggest listing in Japan this year was the Japan Post Office. Okay, one of the successful post offices in England is Royal Mail. The Italian post offices went to the market. I'm not looking for a strategy which talks about privatization or the private sector at this stage at all. But what I am talking about is an organization which can sustain itself because its future economic model is that attractive that it'll be able to get its own capital and become self-sustainable. And wouldn't you want to work for an organization like that, instead of one which has to go and ask for help all of the time because it's an outdated, old-fashioned, irrelevant model.
All right. That's where we're going to have to leave it. Mark Barnes, all the luck, the incoming CEO of the South African Post Office.